Welcome everybody to Innovate and Caffeinate. I am Tamala Darnell, the Regional Coordinator for Grow West Kentucky and Coordinator for Murray-Callaway County Innovate and Caffeinate. So thankful that you're tuning in this morning, and I want to say how welcome and blessed we are to be working with our partners over at Hopkins County Innovate and Caffeinate and Christian County Innovate and Caffeinate. So thank you so much for tuning in with us this morning. And this next presenter, I'm really excited to talk about. I have known her for over 20 years. She is an excellent person and a great friend of mine. And I'm excited for her to share her business with you guys today. So further ado, let me introduce Rachael Houser.
Hi, like Tamala said, I'm Rachael Houser of Rachael Houser Photography. So I'm really thrilled that Tamala asked me to come on today. We don't get to see each other very much anymore because she lives in Murray and I live in Paducah, but I'm just honored that she asked, that she even thought to bring me on and talk a little bit about myself and my business. I am a small business. I'm a photographer here in Western Kentucky. I travel all over the United States for photography, but if I could have my way, I would never leave the Western Kentucky area. I just love it so much. So a little bit about myself. I originally went to school for nursing. I have a nursing degree from Murray State, and I practiced for a couple of years while at the same time pursuing my passion, which was photography. I did not find my passion of photography until halfway through nursing school, and I guess I just have to give it to my husband because he's the one that bought me my first camera. I was actually taking pictures with a little rectangle, what's called a power shoot camera, taking pictures of my friends and my little dogs. And one Christmas, he was like, "You look ridiculous taking pictures with that little thing. Here is a legit camera," which back then it was. I still have that camera to that day. It's very, very tiny compared to the camera that I shoot with now. But that kind of just spread like wildfire. I started taking more pictures of my dogs, of course, more pictures of my friends. I know I have pictures of Tamala from when we would hang out in college at Murray State too. I don't know that I still have those, Tamala, so don't feel scared. I don't think I still have them. But one thing led to another, and my passion grew and grew and grew, and I don't know exactly what happened. I wish I could tell you. It's almost 10 years to the day, so it's been a little bit, but one day I just woke up and decided I wanted to take pictures of people and not just my friends. And so that was in October of 2010. I was a nurse, and after a few years of doing both photography and nursing, I had to make the decision to leave my full-time nursing job and take my business of photography full-time. That was in April of 2013, and here we are, and I haven't looked back. It's been quite an experience. I've learned a ton, but I don't regret the path that I took, and I definitely do not regret where I am as a businesswoman and as a photographer.
Fantastic. How amazing doing, one thing and then completely changing your career path. A lot of times that's scary for people, but when you love your passion and you want to pursue it and that's what you want to do. Why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the successes and challenges you've had along the way? Was there any point where you doubted yourself and said, "Oh no, this isn't going to work. I need to go back to do nursing or something because I'm terrified and this process isn't working"? Or was it all just like, "This is fantastic, smooth sailing from here on out. This is what I needed to do in life"?
Well, I will say that part of my decision to leave nursing had a little bit to do with the fact that my husband, Neil, and I were trying to start a family. And then we learned that we were both infertile. So we were going to, if we wanted to continue having biological children, we were going to have to do fertility treatment. And the more I dug into that, the more I learned how time consuming that was. So I won't lie and tell you that it was 100%, my business was booming and I no longer had time for nursing. nursing. It was half of that for sure. And then partly because my heart was feeling led to put more energy into my business, but also I was looking at the time commitment of what fertility treatments was going to take away from my nursing job. And I knew that I actually physically or legally, if I'm going to talk about contracts with the hospital that I worked for, I actually couldn't take off that much time. So right before we started our fertility treatment for my first child, I had to give my 2 week notice because fertility treatments is a very, very drawn out process. We could have been doing it for a summer, or we could be doing it for years just based off of how successful it was. So, but all that saying, even though that was the primary reason, I also felt really, really at peace with that decision. Although I loved my job as a nurse, I loved it. And I feel like you don't go through nursing school only to be like, well, I'm going to do this for a little bit. That's not a thing. So I really loved my job, but what I loved more was photography. And I probably was kidding myself if I thought I could keep up both careers, even if we weren't infertile, because it only kind of snowballed after I left nursing. And because I found the time and the energy to put forward toward my business and to grow it into a full-time business, even though before it was probably almost a full-time business anyway. But I left nursing April 2013. And so I guess if you want to talk about the first time I ever felt like maybe I could or couldn't do this, as most people kind of understand, as with anything in life, when you make a big decision, or like what they call buyer's remorse, as soon as you buy a house, you're like, oh no, did I buy the wrong house? Should I be doing this? You buy a car and you're like, oh no, maybe I like that other car better. So once I made the decision and I actually left nursing, I think I spent about a month of my full-time photography business career, either missing nursing or finding myself almost bored at times. And I'm like, I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to be working on here. Maybe I felt a little bit lazy because then I was working from home and my hours were different. And I'm actually a night owl. I've been that way my whole life. And my husband is very down to earth and doesn't really require a lot of me. So I was able to work really late in the night into the early morning hours. And then I would sleep until 10. And so then I would wake up at 10 in the morning and I'm like, man, I just wasted my day away. Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? How am I supposed to be doing this work from home, full-time entrepreneurial business? Is this right? And so I second guessed myself a lot, whether I was actually doing it right, only to find out that most photographers and most creatives actually do work better at night. And they kind of, and one of the best things about working for yourself is, or one of the best things they say about working for yourself is you get to kind of place your own hours and you work when you want to work. And so I needed to remind myself, like, I don't have a boss, I am my boss. And so if this is when I choose to have my work hours, then that's when I choose. And as long as if it works well for my business and for my family, then it's okay. And I can tell you now, like I said, now I've been full-time for 7.5 years. I can tell you now that because I have children, I no longer stay up until 3 or 4 in the morning, nor do I sleep until 10 in the morning. But I will say that I would probably still do that, even though I shouldn't. I would probably do that if I didn't have children waking me up every morning. But that is one of the best things about being your own boss and running your own business, is you can kind of decide when you're working what's best based off of whatever kind of area that you're in. So I did spend about a month after leaving nursing trying to figure out kind of like a life work balance, because I'm also a type A, or if you do Enneagrams, I'm type 1. I'm very driven and I'm very follow by the rules, but I'm a workaholic. And so finding that work-life balance has been, I won't lie, a struggle pretty much my entire time. I've not figured it out. Once I felt like I kind of got into a comfortable rhythm, I had a child, and then I kind of figured that out along the way. And then I had another child, and things got kind of all blown out again. So I won't lie, I've not figured it out, but I feel like every day I kind of get closer to it. So the work-life struggle, or the balance, the struggle of that has been ongoing. let's see, other times that I have felt a little bit like maybe I've regretted I won't ever say that I've regretted choosing photography over nursing. I sometimes regret, and this is an ongoing thing too, and some of you may be aware of this, as far as the photography creative business, our industry as a whole in Western Kentucky, but also throughout the United States, is kind of saturated with photographers. And so every time I see a new photographer pop up, I don't do the whole comparison, because I believe that is the thief of joy. And I do believe more of community over competition. But I will tell you that every time a new photographer pops up and I see that they have a legitimate stance in the community, I kind of doubt myself as far as how much longer do I feel like I can do this, because I have been in the industry almost longer than any other photographer in the area. And I don't necessarily see myself dying out. But I do know that there are almost weekly to monthly a new photographer, a younger photographer, maybe having a fresher take on things. They kind of roll into the industry. And so I guess I kind of continuously second guess how long I'll be able to do this. Now, I won't let anyone tell me when I'm going to stop. I'll make that deciding factor. But being a photographer is a lot of work. Running a full-time business is a lot of work. And if there's not much of a need for me or my style of shooting or my style of editing, then I will be out of work. And so, yeah, I think that's when I've struggled. And those are the things that I've struggled with. Tax season rolls around. I definitely struggle every time tax season rolls around. I am an incorporated an S corp, so I have to file taxes separately, and then I file taxes for my family, and then the government takes all my money, and so that's not fun. But definitely the benefits outweigh the cons.
I think what you were feeling is probably what every other entrepreneur feels, you know, how to stay relevant, you know, is the new competition going to knock me out? But like you said, you are a community over, you know, competition type of person. And I've seen you partner with many local businesses in the area and do some amazing events. So I think you will be forever relevant because you are a fantastic photographer. And I'm so blessed to have you do my wedding and everything. And gosh, all kinds of life event photos for me. So I will definitely keep you in business.
I'm glad.
So let's talk a little bit about, you know, you went to school for nursing. You did not go to school for business at all. And then all of a sudden you're jumping into this business. Did you have, you know, any mentors, like, or did you just decide I'm going to, you know, fumble my way through this? Or how did you kind of, you know, get all your ducks in a row when it came? Because I mean, 10 years ago, you know, there's a lot of new resources today for small businesses, but back then it was really hard to find, you know, resources for small businesses. So kind of talk about how you kind of navigated the waters of entrepreneurship without having that background.
Absolutely. So I took a few accounting classes when I was at Murray State. There was a tiny bit of time where I thought maybe I was going to be an accountant. After those accounting business classes, I decided, no, it's not for me. So it's funny that here I am on the other side. And I am a business person. So my father is an entrepreneur, has been my entire life. He started off as a CPA, so he was an accountant. And I think that may be why I thought that I could try to do accounting. My dad is completely content doing the same thing every day, and I am not. But I did have his support, and which meant a ton. So when I'm leaving such a stable career such as nursing and going off to be an entrepreneur and build my own business, that's a huge risk. And it really felt good that I had someone in my corner who has been doing it for as long as I'd been alive and could help me navigate that. However, creative businesses, while they, as you know, the business is the base, and so it's similar to other businesses such as retail and all those other things, but creative businesses can kind of do things a lot differently and sometimes have to do things differently. So he could only really help me so far, and then he was just like, I don't know what this is. And then I had to really seek out some additional help. And as far as professionals, no, it didn't come from any professionals. I never went and took any business classes. But few years down the road into my photography business, so it was probably in 2014, 2015, I started following on social media. So thank you, Facebook. Thank you, internet and blogs and all the things. I started following some really, really successful, at least in my eyes, photographers across the nation. And they'd been doing it for longer than I had. That was almost the only prerequisite. I was like, if you've been doing it longer than me, then I feel like you know more than me. But also, I could see that they had a strong following across the internet and on social media as well. And so I kind of just picked up what I could. I asked questions. I emailed people. Some people emailed me back, some people didn't. But I asked questions. Some people that were very forthcoming with their business and also photography knowledge on their websites and on their blogs and on social media. I would just read what they had to say. I would jot down almost everything, and then I would try to implement what I thought was best for my business. Of course, when social media really became the huge platform that it is now for businesses. So like Facebook, Instagram. I don't use Twitter, but I believe that there's a community out there for businesses and creative businesses there on Twitter. But Facebook and Instagram are my primary social media platforms. And very, very thankful and grateful to the people that decided that they wanted to use those platforms to push out their information and their knowledge, because there are a ton of us out there that really want to know things. And I am one of those people. So I feel like I have just picked up little bits and pieces as I've gone along. It was never like I went to a workshop and I was like, finally, I've got all the things I need. Because like you mentioned, Pamela, there were few resources when I started, and there are a ton and now. And so that's only been kind of gradually growing. So as resources became available, I would kind of read through what I thought would be applicable to my job, and I would apply what I thought might benefit my job. Now, I've applied a lot of things, and then a couple of months down the road being like, nope, that didn't work. And I would take it away, which, being a creative business owner, I actually can do that fairly easily, and a lot of it on the back end, and nobody ever knows that I tried something and it was not successful. So I think that that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs maybe don't want to try. They're like, oh no, all eyes are on me. And if I start something, it'll fail, and then that'll be a failure, and that will be what people remember from me. But when you work for yourself, or you work for a small or like in a small team, you can try a whole lot of things, and the public never really even knows about it. Or if they do, you try it once and you don't have to pretend like it was supposed to be a permanent thing. You could have pretend like, oh, it was temporary the whole time. Ooh, it just didn't work out. And that's okay. And I think that there are a lot of, because our, at least the photography and industry is very saturated, I think that there are so many people doing so many different things. You might not always be the person that will be remembered for that thing that didn't work out. So, but I never took any really formal, other than my accounting business courses, which weren't very businessy. They were mostly about taxes and real estate, weirdly enough. So other than that, I've never taken any formal business classes. If you ask my dad, who is my accountant for my business and for our personal taxes, if you ask him, I don't do that great of a job of bookkeeping. So I don't keep my receipts as well as I should. But I have been able to, as far as taxes go and all of that kind of bookkeeping stuff, I've been able to do well enough. So I think that's another thing that entrepreneurs have to remember when they're starting out. At least if you don't have a huge team, then it's okay that you don't really know everything that you're doing quite yet. You'll kind of get there. So yes, I definitely fumbled along, as it were, in the past years. But I think where I am now, I definitely have a very good system, and I'm all about systems. So I have a very good system in place, but it took me a while to get there. So here I am, 10 years later, finally got it down, maybe. I don't know.
Well, in my eyes, you have been extremely successful from watching on the outside. And it's a true testament to, others out there who are trying to, get into entrepreneurship. You don't have to have the background, an entrepreneur background. You don't have to go to school for it. You can jump into it anytime that you want to. And now, like I said, there's plenty of resources to help you with. And thankfully, a dad as a CPA is also a good thing as well. I always like to touch on a little bit about how you have had to pivot or shift during this pandemic. I know when, March came and we all shut down, none of us thought, I think, we were going to be where we are today. I think we thought, oh, it'll be a few weeks, everything will be fine, and then I can, start going again. And with you, your business is in person, face to face. You can't really conduct virtual photography businesses. So how did you, adapt, change, and you had to make quick changes for the pandemic. So what were your thoughts on in March about how you were going to cope with this? And did you have any fun ideas that you tried out that worked and still are working to keep your business going?
So in March, knowing at that time that my wedding season would, I should step back. I'm a portrait and wedding photographer. So my wedding season wasn't going to start until May 5th. That was my first wedding of the year. Well, I say that. I had a January wedding. I barely count that as like in the wedding season. Typically wedding season doesn't start until spring. So in March when that happened, I definitely was like, ooh, I wonder how this is going to affect my May weddings. Hopefully we'll be okay. Portraits had only just begun picking up because I don't typically shoot outdoor portraits until it's warm enough, but also until things are kind of budding outside on the trees and whatnot. So portrait sessions had begun starting. So I did have a few in March already booked up. I had all of April booked. And that's how far I was scheduling wise. And so when we started getting word, of course, I know that I had started hearing of COVID. Of course, they hadn't named it COVID, but the novel coronavirus, probably in February. But I actually made fun of my friend for prepping for something that I was like, you're crazy, it's not here, and we're gonna be fine. Why are you stocking your deep freeze kind of thing? And then a month later, and I'm like, maybe we should go to the grocery and spend $300 to $600 to stock up our deep freeze, which actually wasn't even at our house. And we had to go get it from my parents' shop building and bring it home. So it was all like, and I feel like a lot of people felt like that. It was all like, oh, we don't know what that is. And it's probably, we're going to be fine. And then all of a sudden mid-March happens and we're like, we're not okay. Things aren't bad here yet, but they're probably going to be unless we make some drastic changes. So one of the changes that I made, which I think it was easy because here in Kentucky, we had the Healthy at Home initiative brought on by our governor. And so it really wasn't a personal decision that I had to make. Thankfully, I may have made that decision on my own. I don't know, but I was a little bit forced to close down my doors. So I was no longer doing studio portraits because we're in my studio right now, or I am. Tamala is not, but I'm in my studio right now. So like I do have a studio inside my home that I do portraits through, like in all throughout the year. And so I had to close down my studio, but that wasn't a big problem because no one was wanting to go inside other people's homes anyway. I had to decrease my portrait sessions that I did outdoor. And thankfully, even though they are in person, I rarely get closer than 6, 8, maybe even 10 feet to the clients that I'm photographing at any given time. Now, if I'm shooting a newborn portrait in the studio, I'm all up in that baby's personal space, but outside portraits are different and I'm able to social distance. So the sessions that I still had scheduled in March, I actually just approached every individual client and kind of judged their comfort level on that. Most people were like, yeah, let's reschedule. And so that made it really easy for me when I learned in the end of March that I, as a non-essential business, should no longer be conducting business with the public. Again, brought on by our governor of Kentucky. So that was really another thing that was easy. It was taking a little bit of the blame off of me. And I was able to shoot out emails to the clients that I had scheduled for April and just be like, I'm so sorry, let's reschedule. And in those emails, I actually didn't give a date because I was aware that I didn't know, but I know in my head and my heart, I was like, when this is all over, 6 to 8 weeks kind of thing, I'll touch base and we'll be able to like reschedule everyone. And that happened a little bit because around mid-May is when things started talking about when, like the dates that they would open up. And then I was actually, as a photographer and as a business photographer, I was able to, the governor, maybe not the governor, but the state of Kentucky actually gave out a list of like what these people can and can't do. So as a photographer, I had limitations, I had rules, but I was allowed to open. So that helped out a little bit. But as far as my weddings went, only one of my weddings in May happened. I had 5 in May, only one of them happened. And that's only because it was actually in Destin, Florida. And before everyone gets crazy, this was right before everything really hit bad in Florida. Now, if it were a June wedding, I'd been like, I'm so sorry about your luck kind of thing. I'm not going to be there. But this wedding in Destin, Florida happened before everything blew up in Florida. So I was okay with going that one. I was able to wear my mask while I worked, even though it was hot outside, I still did it. You can't really social distance when you're shooting a reception. So that wasn't, I wasn't able to social distance as far as distance, but I did have my mask on, and there were a lot less people there that would have been a normal wedding. This was already a destination wedding. They had a tiny guest count as it was. So one of the things that I think helped me and helped my clients, which I'm pretty, I'm very pro communication as a person in general. So one of the things that I know helped my clients is throughout the craziness of April, the craziness of May, before I was able to legally start having more portraits, as it were. I just did constant communication. So if I had told them in March that, you know, I would touch base back with them in a couple weeks to a month, I made sure that I did that. And I know my clients had come back and be like, thanks so much for keeping us updated on where you were. And basically, again, because my governor said I could and couldn't do things, I was able to say like, you know, as a non-essential business, I can't do blah, blah, blah. So I think that that's something that I have been able to take, that I've always been doing in my business beforehand, and that really came in handy, was just the constant communication that I had with my clients. And I know that from all of it used to be daily videos or Facebook Lives that our governor did throughout the main beginning of the COVID pandemic. That's one thing that we can take from that, is everybody really enjoyed, whether you were liking what he was saying or not, we really liked being updated constantly as things were changing. So even if I had told them I was going to touch base in a month, if I learned something new, I was right on that email or my texting. I text with some of my clients, and I was very open about like, hey, I heard that I might be able to start opening my studio on this date. It's unsure, but I'll keep you posted, kind of thing. So open communication was really what kind of calmed my nerves, and also calmed the nerves of my clients as far as the money that they had already invested in their portraits. Now, as far as weddings, at the end of March, I also touched base with for like the next 3 months, because I think at the end of March is when we kind of got a closer number, or rather date, number of like weeks that we might be doing this, which is everything being so limited. And so I reached out to all of my brides for the next like probably 2 to 3 months after that. And I let them know that I wanted to have a phone call or a Zoom call with them to talk about their options, and also just to kind of set them at ease, letting them know, because at this point, this is when people weren't just postponing a couple of months. This is when people were deciding to, if they were going to have their wedding, they were decreasing all of their guests, and it was just going to be in like immediate family and maybe a couple of best friends, or they were deciding to postpone for a complete year. And I really, again, the open communication thing, I really wanted my brides to know that I would do whatever they wanted me to do. I was very confident in the social distancing measures that I had been taking, that I was going to continue to take, and that I would take on their wedding day. So I needed to make sure that they heard me, heard my voice, and maybe even saw my face to see that I'm not freaking out. You know, a lot of things can be lost in translation when it comes to texting or email. So I needed them to know that I'm not freaking out. And I really was genuinely letting them know I'll do whatever they want me to do. I will be there supporting them, because my brides are my top priority. So I know that they were already freaking out. And the thing that I didn't want them to do was freak out about their wedding photographer. So the open communication has helped a lot. I will say that the pandemic closing everything down was beneficial in many ways for how much money I spent for our family and as a business. So if I'm not doing a lot, then I'm not spending a lot. And so even though I did see a good cut of income coming in, because if I'm not shooting portraits, that I'm not getting that money. And that's half of my income or portraits. So it helped a little bit that way financially. I'm not getting that money, but I'm also not spending that money. Now, when things started opening up and people started doing more things in June and July, I started not doing more things, but definitely started spending more money. And I know that because of that, I've had to pick up on my bookings a little bit, which at that point in time, everybody else was kind of awakening from the pandemic a little bit. So it wasn't hard for me to pick up on booking. But now, honestly, my bookings, and that might not be what everybody wants to hear or what everybody else is experiencing, but my bookings are the same they would have been this time last year. So I'm actually right on target for where I should be annually. But of course, things have had to change. You know, it's really weird to shoot a portrait session when I'm wearing a mask and where I require that my clients wear a mask up until the point of when we start shooting. You know, that's weird. And I've really had to limit my studio sessions, even though I can still have my studio open. I'm wearing a mask when I shoot, and just like outdoor portraits, when my clients are walking through my home to come to my in-home studio, they're wearing their mask, and I'm having to Lysol spray all the door handles, you know, before and after, because I'm not exactly sure what they touched. I wasn't really paying attention that closely, but there's a chance that they were. So I'm doing those things to make sure that I keep myself and my family safe, but also my clients. The last thing I would ever want to hear is someone got sick because of me and maybe I was asymptomatic. So those are a few things that I've had to change that are pretty specific to my business. But as a whole, just that open communication has just really put people at ease, because there's a lot of communication going on out there that is not positive, and it's not reassuring, and it's not supporting or supportive or encouraging. And I try to be that for the people that I service, even if I'm not feeling that way inside. I'm actually really, really good about faking how I feel. But in all honesty, I have found that my clients who actually truly value the work that I do for them, they're showing up in my life and they're telling me, you know, like, yeah, we don't have as much money. Maybe one of us was laid off, but photography and portraits are very important to us. So we want to have that. I did decrease my pricing for several months because I did not want to be a burden on my clients. They were choosing to keep me in, and they did not have to choose that. A lot of people have foregone a lot of things financially and what they've done in their normal day-to-day life. And a lot of people are still keeping me in that mixture of what they will continue to do. And so I'm just very thankful to my clients that have chosen to keep me around. But honestly, I've not had to change too much, thankfully. I know that's not what a lot of people have done. And I think that's just one of the benefits of my business being B. Now, I do have an assistant. She started with me a month and a half before COVID really hit hard. So she was with me a month and a half in person, and we got together once a week. And then we had to go to where we were just talking on the phone and working. And we actually started in-person meetings while socially distancing in June. But I did take, because of her, I did take on one of those payroll protection loans that I recently learned that I won't have to pay back, which that was kind of, I didn't get to use any of that money for myself, but I was able to keep her on and continue paying her. And I know that without that payroll protection loan, I would have probably had to not let her go, but been like, I'm sorry, we're going to have to pause your employment with me. But she is actually one of the reasons why I've been able to keep going as well as I have on the front end for my clients, because she has been my marketing and my social media head, I will say. She takes care of a lot of that for me. So even if I was too busy, the fact that I've lost all my childcare because I can't have anyone keep my kids and that kind of thing, she was able to still pick up a lot of what I missed. So yeah. Okay. I think that's all.
No, that was fantastic. I know we are like probably over our 30-minute time slot, but I just wanted to ask one fun, quick question, which is probably gonna be really hard for you to answer,
Okay.
but just the first thing that comes to your mind when I answer this. What is your absolute favorite thing to take pictures of?
Oh my gosh, weddings, hand down.
Okay, all right. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for being with us this morning and sharing your story. It was
Thank you
great to
so much
hear
for
it.
having me.
You're so welcome. So if you guys are interested in having an Innovate and Caffeinate in your community, please reach out to our regional coordinator, Melanie Tapp. Her email is shown on the screen. Or if you are interested in sharing your entrepreneurial journey with our community, please also reach out to Melanie, and we would love to feature you on one of our episodes, because that's what I'm calling them now. Please tune in next week. We will have a presenter for you to listen then, and I can assure you it'll probably be an excellent story as well. But thank you so much for staying with us today and listening to Rachel's story, and we will see you guys next week.